Thank you, Megan, for honoring my request to have this read out of the JPS. I love, this is my version of the Jewish Study Bible. It's the second edition. I had to have it for school. With a big in bold letters, do not use the digital one, which, whatever, it's 2025, but okay. And if you are looking for a Jewish Study Bible, the footnotes, and this is the Bible part. This is all essays and footnotes and just so much stuff. One thing about seminary, and I'm so glad you all are joining me on this journey because you will hear about it every week. But I'm going into week 8, and week 6, it was me and Jeremiah, and Lord knows I wept. But I was like, have I ever even seen a Bible? Like, what in the name of Palestinian Jewish Jesus? I don't know. Like, I had a whole existential crisis. It was not a crisis of faith, but it was like, Lord have mercy. Okay. So, welcome to the party that we all will be going on. And you get to do it with no tuition fee. So, and if you did it already, just consider it a continuing education credit, because we shall go together. This week, when I sent over my message title, I chuckled. You know, I love a pop culture reference. And honestly, I'm just trying to impress Nadia with how much and how hip I am. It works sometimes. When I go musical theater, it's better. So I'm going to see 2 more plays this year to catch up, Nadia, don't worry. And this one may be a bit older of a reference. But when you say today's title, you must add a very deep Southern twang. And you have to give it the Forrest Gump treatment and say, is this seat taken? And it doesn't have to be as great as mine was. But when I thought about the table, the seat, and just what the text meant to me this week, I just saw Forrest as that little kid getting on the bus. And it took him a long time to get on the bus because Mama told him that you don't ride with strangers, and the bus driver had to do her best job to get him on the bus. And he walked by seat by seat by seat. Each kid, you can't sit here. And they move their little backpack and they slide over. And a kid finally says, you can sit here. Later, after Forrest joins the Army, he is getting on the bus to go to wherever they're going. And it happens again. And I was going to show the clip today, but it's a lot of gas and people I never met and some cussing, and so I didn't know what sensibilities you had this Sunday Communion Day. So I was like, well, I'll save cussing for ordinary day. I won't add it in on World Communion Day just in case. So God is watching extra. But so he gets on this Army bus, and these grown-ups are like, well, not grown-ups, but these grown men are like, you can't sit here, no. And then Bubba moves over, puts his little suitcase on his lap, and he lets Forrest sit there. What's hard about it, number one, is, for me, was the consistency by which, when you're different, you're excluded. You're excluded when you're young, you're excluded when you're old, you're excluded in between. And it just kept playing out and out for him. And I know it feels ordinary. That is the worst feeling in the world for me. Even now, if I'm going to a restaurant or one of you invite me out, you may have seen the message that says, can you make sure you save me a seat? Because that feeling of walking into a room and trying to look for your friends or find a place to sit or feel like you belong is it's a landmine for me. So it feels like a really small moment, but it's the truth, a truth of being turned away and longing for someone to say to us, hey, you sit here. This week, it's just been playing over and over and over again in my life. I had to have a meeting with my professor and the associate dean after class. A person had made an argument, and I didn't say that argument is stupid because I'm much more academic than that. But it was just a weak argument. And after I gave my view in this vigorous discourse, he was like, I will defend my argument because clearly you just don't understand what the word means. I was like, ooh, the Lord should have raptured me because I am about to act up. So I turned off my camera and I allowed my spirit to settle. And then I came back and said, in defense of a weak argument, the rhetoric of I must not understand is also weak. I said what I said. And it went well from there because everybody agreed with me and I felt very vindicated. But it hurt because for 7 weeks I've been fighting for my life in seminary, my Black life, my non-binary life, my queer life, in a space where I think and thought was for me, but now I had doubts. So I got on with Dr. David Evans, an African-American male who's taught at EMS for 12 years. And I said, I am sick of fighting for my Black life, and I would like to know for my $10,000 a semester what you plan to do about it. And he was like, oh, okay, let's just get to it. The question I had was, will there ever be a space for me? Is there a table where I just inherently belong? This week also, we got a call shortly after we lost Michelle that following day. Ingrid's mom had a seizure. And they were 3 hours away from where they lived to attend a funeral. And in that, she went to the hospital, and it was about 3 days before they figured out what happened. There was a golf ball-sized tumor on her brain. Ingrid's mom is 85 years old. The siblings all got on calls to determine what to do next, which, if you know my wife, means that I helped to determine what was next. And they decided to go forward with surgery. Ingrid flew out later that week on Thursday. I was off work, but I couldn't go with her because they do not acknowledge me. To this day, I've never met any of them. Her sister I talk to from time to time, or in the midst of, tell so-and-so I said hi, whatever. She wishes me a happy birthday and all the major holidays. But when we got married, it was said that I would not be welcome in their home. This week has been interesting because I don't treat people how they treat me. I don't match energy. I treat people as unto the Lord. I treat people based on who I am, not who they are. So all week, they've accepted my resources. They've accepted my advice, my wisdom, my recommendations for doctors, my money, but not me. And in that absence, I found myself asking again, is there room for me? The day before surgery, I was up all night praying and fasting and hoping, because even in her dislike of me or even in their unacceptance, child, you don't deserve to die for it. Surgery was on Wednesday, October 1st, 8 hours, and she made it through. I celebrated and I rejoiced, and she is back home, and my wife will be back home on Tuesday. But it's still this idea of is there room and what determines where we get to fit in? These moments for me this week are not isolated. It's just two that I've chosen, but they mirror deeper fractures in our society. Fractures in our world that separate and divide based on race, size, ability, gender, sexual orientation, class. Laws are written to define who has the right to be here and who doesn't. And the question I think about is, who had the right to make the law because it was never yours in the first place? The people that legislate are still criminal in that this land is stolen. It was not yours to legislate. But that's not this message. We'll save that for another day. Yeah, amen. But our borders are fortified to determine who can cross and who can get turned back. And I just want to say here, today's gonna be a very interesting day. This ADHD, I told Leah, my meds ain't kicked in. So the tangents you get, they'll be holy, but you might wanna take some notes. I wanna say, as we think about the borders of this world and what's going on, because I'm never not gonna name the truths of our day. It may not be you yet. But under empire, an authoritarian and fascist government, it could be you one day. And even as a person of color, a Black person, so many people, when we started talking about birthright, citizenship, and ICE, Black people, there were some Black people who felt like, look, we did our part, we tried to vote, you're on your own. And it broke my heart because such were some of us, we are not far behind. And this week we saw that in Chicago, where an apartment building was raided, children separated from their parents and zip-tied and jailed without proffered warrants and any of that. So you may think you are safe at home in your house in Newton and Wichita and Heston and Tabor, McPherson, I don't know, and all of the places, but we are not exempt, none of us. And my prayer is that we get to a place when it's happening to one, it's happening to all, and we respond out of that reality. But all over the place, people are determining who gets to come. At the heart of it is still, is there a place for me? That's what made me pick 2 Samuel 9. David is newly enthroned as the king. After years of conflict and intrigue, like your favorite Patterson novel, the house of Saul has finally been defeated, and the path is clear for David to reign, to fulfill the prophecy. In the world of the ancient Near East, what was supposed to have happened when David took over was he was supposed to kill everyone in Saul's bloodline. That way there was no one who would fight for the throne later. A new monarch would wipe out the whole old dynasty, remove every rival, eliminate anyone who could later claim the throne. In that world, survival meant leaving no challengers. But the text tells us that David did something unusual. Instead of purging the line, David asked, is there anyone still left of the house of Saul to whom I can keep faith for the sake of Jonathan? That keep faith in Hebrew is chesed. It is a kindness, a mercy. Is there anyone I can show steadfast love to, faithfulness, goodness? That kindness was based on a covenant made in 1 Samuel 20 that Jonathan called David to. And I love this. I love the way that 1 Samuel 20 ends. Jonathan and David they're homies. They're best friends. And depending on your view of the Bible, maybe something different, but you read your own Bible in your own time. If you want to chat about it, I got 3 scholarly articles that I know of that I can help. But they devised this scheme, and Jonathan says David's hiding in the woods and in the brush or what have you. And Jonathan says, I'm going to shoot my arrows, and if I say the arrows are to the right of you, you know you can come. It's okay. If I say the arrows are beyond you, then you have to run. After they made this commitment to each other that even in my life as you were, even in my death, we are friends. Tend to me. Take care of that which was mine. So Jonathan sends out a young man and he has his arrows and he says, you just run that way and collect these arrows that I shoot. And he shoots them and David waits. And Jonathan yells, the arrows are beyond you. And so David knows it's not yet quite safe. And they say their goodbyes. And at the very last words, they're crying. They kiss. And it says, and David wept longer. And that just does something to my heart. Because at this point, I still like David. He ain't did all the stuff that causes conflict in my soul yet. But it just breaks my heart. So anyway, this is David making good on covenant. That is the word for today. Folks on Zoom, speaking of covenant, get your elements. Get your water, your wine, your Pepsi, I don't care. Get your bread. You know, I approve of Oreos, cakes, whatever that thing. that upholds that special morsel for later communion. But David sends out, where is anyone? Is there anyone I can hold my covenant towards? Word is brought that Jonathan's son Mephibosheth is still alive. His life story is already one of hardship and loss. In the midst of all this chaos, as his wet nurse was trying to escape with him, he was dropped and became disabled. In a society that equated worth with strength, his body marked him now as less than. Disability in that world, like it is in this one, was not seen as a difference to be embraced, but as a defect. Scholars of disability studies, Gelia, Frank, and Hahn, remind us that cultures shaped by productivity and autonomy treat impairment as a tragedy, as something to cure or erase. The real barrier is not the impairment, but the way society structures its idea of belonging. People with disabilities are excluded not because they couldn't participate, but because the world refuses to accommodate. Our disabled bodies start to get marked in a culture that prizes perfection and production, leaving us othered and isolated. That was Mephibosheth's reality. He is a descendant of Saul, which already marked him as a danger and a threat. He is disabled, which already leads him to be socially diminished. He lives in Lo Debar, a name that literally means no pasture or no word. A place of emptiness and silence. He had every reason to expect death or exile when summoned to the king. Even his name carries stigma. In earlier texts, he is called Merib-Baal. And I know I'm saying Baal English because the Hebrew, I have not got that guttural sound yet that should between the two syllables. Third semester, I'll have it. But right now, we're going to use the English Baal. A name that meant Baal contends or contender with Baal. And Baal was a term for Canaanite lord, so it covered a lot of deities, not just the deity of fertility that is sometimes associated with. But the editors biblically did not want Israel to have any memory of Baal, and so they changed it to Mephibosheth. And that last part, the Besheth part, means shame. So his identity was shaped by shame. He was renamed and recast. So when David calls for him, he comes not only as a disabled man from a defeated society whose name has been changed by someone else to carry the shame of who he was. He was afraid. But David doesn't treat him as a rival or a threat again. David was operating in good David and not foolishness and crime and all of those other things. Again, another message. David gets it right. He restores his family land. He restores him economically, not just for himself, but for generations to come. And though that could have been enough, David says, look here, come live here. You will sit at my table like my own children, one of my sons. The place of the king, a place of protection and provision, a place of belonging. To a person that by every metric and every story should have and was excluded, David extended covenant. The table in that story, it's not just furniture. It symbolizes power. To eat at the king's table was recognized as part of the household and gain favor. For Mephibosheth, it means that he was no longer or not the dead dog that he thought he was. The table said, you belong and you have been counted. Here's a good part for us to keep our lens of disability, justice, and theology on. Because Mephibosheth's disability is not erased at the table. The text does not say that the table healed, that the table set free, that the table delivered. He is not fixed or made normal by society's estimation. He comes as he is. He's carried into the presence of the king with his past, his scars, his limitations. And in that condition, as he is, he gets seated. He is given a seat, his dignity is restored, and he did not have to be erased. He did not have to receive, oh, I will pray for you. And though prayer in its place is a blessing, but we can't just erase the realities of who people are because it makes us uncomfortable. Belonging means that our bodies, our stories, our scars, our flaws, our weaknesses are not barriers to the table. It's part of why the invitation first existed. At David's table, Mephibosheth's past and future converge. His past, scarred by loss, marked by disability, rewritten by the shame of his name, is no longer the whole story. His future, uncertain, fragile, kind of risky, is reframed by covenant extended to him. At the table, covenant reframes and names and narrates anew. But before we stop here and tie up the bow, I must do sound exegetical work. Scripture is not always tidy, and we got to be careful not to just pick the part that we like and don't talk about none of the rest on the other side of it, because it still gets complicated even still. We do ourselves a disservice when we only give the little piece that feels good. Now, there are times when you just need the Jesus wept and you don't really need the whole other piece. You got it, but that's not today. Today, we got to trace this covenant faithfulness honestly, and we got to reckon with the complications. Where we read from today, 2 Samuel 9, all is well until it ain't. David is Absalom, it's foolishness, it's war, there's some Amorites over there, it's a lot going on. So when we get to 2 Samuel 16, David is fleeing Jerusalem once again. If you got a good study Bible, it says Absalom's rebellion. Mephibosheth is no longer there. Instead, his servant Ziba meets David with donkeys, bread, and wine, and David says, "Where is Mephibosheth?" And Ziba says, "He remained in Jerusalem, for he thought, now that the house of Israel will give me back the kingdom of my father." On the strength of the accusation alone, because see, now we get to know the other side of David, he's like, "Oh yeah, Mephibosheth, no more. Ziba, you get all his land, that's it." So then we go through that, we lose sight of Mephibosheth again, and then we get to 2 Samuel 19. The truth gets less clear. When David returns, Mephibosheth comes out to meet him. The text is so vivid. He had not tended his feet. He had not trimmed his beard. He had not washed his clothes from the day David left until the day he returned. This don't match Ziba's story. Untrimmed toenails and the odor that had to emit from his body does not feel like betrayal to me. I'm going to betray you fresh. He explained that I wanted to go with you. I wanted to be there, but I could not get on the donkey by myself. My servant deceived me. And David, in the midst of everything he was in the midst of, he wouldn't untangle the full truth, but he did declare that Mephibosheth and Ziba should divide the land between them. And Mephibosheth responds with a word of relinquishment. Let him take it all. Now that my lord, the king, has returned safely to his house, give it to him. And later you'll see how this lack of attention to truth, this division, divides the land of Israel later. But even at the king's table, Mephibosheth's place was not beyond question. Even in covenant, he was doubted. His body is weaponized against him. Ziba then took the donkey, knowing good and well that Mephibosheth couldn't saddle one on his own, and had he could, it was gone. The table is radical, yes, but it is not perfect. And neither is being in community. It holds both inclusion and sometimes suspicion, a little bit of belonging and a little bit of betrayal. And maybe that's what makes the story even more true for us. Because isn't that what our table looks like? Family tables, which I'll be ready to flip over every day. Conference room tables, political tables, our church potluck table. They carry both welcome and wounding. You can be invited in and still question. You can be given a place and not believed. You can be honored one moment, undermined the next. The story of Mephibosheth is not about just being seated once. It's about how fragile inclusion can be when it depends on our human natures. Which is why the fact that this was covenant matters. David's table can be shaken up by rumor and suspicion. God's table cannot. David's welcome may falter. God's welcome does not. This is the subversive gift of the good news and the text. In a culture that expects elimination and exclusion, canceling, David practices mercy. In a world that prizes perfectionism, Mephibosheth is honored. And in a faith where betrayal is often the order of the day, God's covenant love still makes room. In a world where people are tirelessly working to decide who gets to be here, who does not, legally and illegally, constitutionally and unconstitutionally, we see and serve a God that does not forget the overlooked and makes room for us all. And so it is at the communion table as well. When we come to this table, we are not leaving or superseding the table of the Hebrew Bible. We are continuing in the same current of covenant. Just as David's table disrupted the expectations of monarchy, Jesus' table disrupts the expectations of religion. He gathered tax collectors, women, lepers, a couple good prostitutes and sex workers, fishermen and doubters. He fed thousands with a few little bread and some loaves of, not loaves of fish, some bread and fish. A loaf of fish is very interesting. It sounds real Scandinavian or something. God's table was never about worthiness. It was about belonging. The table stands as God's defiance against the foolishness of this world. Covenant and betrayal can sit side by side. And in it, God is not fragile or soft. God's faithfulness holds fast. It makes space. It endures even when we, you, me, I, falter. Communion doesn't replace covenant. It's another embodiment of it. When we break bread and when we share the cup, we're remembering that God's faithfulness is steadfast. We're affirming that no matter what the world may say, no matter what you may experience outside, no matter what they say on your job, there's room for you here. It's like the song my grandma used to sing, "This joy that I have, the world didn't give it, and the world can't take it away." There is room for us all. Today is World Communion Day, and there are places that will not make room for some of you and me. At New Creation, we practice an open table. I love communion so much that I ride around with it in my car just in case I run into somebody that's going to ask me so I can give it to them. I got the little cups where you just rip the little part and the bread is there, then you open the second part. Ingrid is always like, "Why do you travel with the communion?" Because you never know who's going to need it. It's important. A mobile communion Audi is outside. For the 2 months after Ash Wednesday, I had ashes in there too. Because I believe it is for all of us. That if you can ask for it and desire it, it ought to be yours. I pray for those today that desire communion and cannot have it. That desire to enter covenant, to meet at the table of exchange, who are being told that they cannot. I pray for those who are of denominational practices that have been shared that if you take it wrongly, that bad things happen to you. And I rejoice that ours is open with our gluten-free pretzels because we care, and our juice. When we come to this table, we come with our scars, we come with the betrayals, we come with our questions, and we come with our hope. And here, right there, is where we meet God. On the night before he was betrayed, Jesus took the bread. He gave thanks, he broke it, and he gave it to his disciples, saying, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And after supper, he took the cup, saying, "The cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this whenever you drink it in remembrance of me." We see the thread of covenant. This invitation, as we go to this table, as we eat from this table, the invitation to it becomes the foundation of our calling to live as people of Chesed, to widen the tables we sit at so no one has to wonder, is there space for them? This table, like the table in 2 Samuel. And it's so interesting there because they really wanted to drive home the point that he was disabled. They say it on the front, and the last sentence of the chapter is like, oh yeah, and his feet were lame. It's like an exclusionary sandwich. Lame on the front, lame on the end, and in the middle is a few nice things. But they really wanted to drive that point home. But I say that this table is one of equity and equality. Here, the scholar and the struggler get their gluten-free pretzels side by side. Here, the abled and the disabled are fed with the same bread. Here, queer bodies, immigrant bodies, black and brown bodies, straight bodies, trans bodies, gender expansive, in between bodies, I'm not yet sure bodies, are honored and nourished. Everybody. Here, when the question is asked, is this seat taken, is met with an answer as steady as covenant, as steady as God, as steady as the place from whence cometh my help. Yes, this seat is taken by you, by love, by God's enduring faithfulness. As we come to the table, come with confidence. Come with boldness. Come knowing that the deal has already been made. The contract has already been signed. The work of the cross has already been completed. And none of us got raptured up last Tuesday, and so there is still yet work to do. We are all still here. As the volunteers come to prepare, may we prepare our hearts for the table. A table where you belong. A table where you don't have to petition or ask my permission to enter this place of exchange. What will you leave at the table today? What are you asking for from this covenant? Is it beauty for ashes? Is it joy for pain? May you know it, may you see it, may you have it. Come to the table where all may eat, where all are welcome. Break bread with us, drink wine with us, as we do this in remembrance of Christ. Come to the table.